Good evening. Welcome to Stab the Dragon, here with whiskey review number 10. Coming to you from my bunker in Fort Worth, Texas, I'm doing a series of reviews of Fort Worth area whiskeys. You might stretch that to be North Texas whiskeys or DFW area whiskeys. So far in this series, I've reviewed the TX blended whiskey and TX bourbon, both from Firestone and Robertson Distillery, now owned by Pernod Ricard. We've looked at Blackland Bourbon and Blackland Rye from the Blackland Distillery here in Fort Worth. I examined 1835 bourbon from North Texas Distillers and reviewed 2 bottles of finished whiskeys from Oak and Eden, Rye and Spire, and Bourbon and Rahr, which used a Spire-soaked in my favorite craft beer from right here in Fort Worth, Rahr's Scottish Ale, Iron Thistle. I've included in my reviews 2 whiskeys that are not from the Fort Worth area. I did Hooten Young American Whiskey and Leadslinger's Rye. And those are 2 military-related whiskeys, which is kind of a theme with me. Hooten Young is from Master Sergeant Norm Hooten, retired United States Army, Delta Force, of Black Hawk Down fame. And then Leadslinger's Fighting Spirit Rye is produced by Matt Best, Army Ranger, Special Operator, and founder of Black Rifle Coffee, as well as Leadslinger's Whiskey and Article 15 clothing. I reviewed Hooten Young in the first week of October for the anniversary of the Battle of Mogadishu, and I reviewed Leadslinger's Rye on Veterans Day. There's a discernible pattern in my whiskey reviews. What I'm trying to do is 2 products from each of the distilleries in the Fort Worth, North Texas area. I hope to follow that pattern of 2 whiskeys per distillery in the future when I move on from the Fort Worth series next year. What I hope to do in 2022, Lord willing, is to start doing some whiskey comparisons, maybe with competition between the Fort Worth whiskeys, so I can discern which one is going to be my favorite. But I may do something different instead of that. More about that later. For tonight, however, what I've got is Witherspoon Distillery, Witherspoon Bourbon. This is a port-finished bourbon, straight bourbon, from Witherspoon Distillery in Lewisville, Texas. That's about 30 miles from my house. I'm on the west side of Fort Worth. So it's not exactly in Fort Worth, and it is in Denton County, not Tarrant County, but it's close enough. So let's begin this review with a history of this whiskey. The Witherspoon Distillery was begun in 2012 by Quentin Witherspoon, United States Marine Corps veteran, with his business partners Natasha and Ryan DeHart. The label on the front of the bottle has "Always Faithful." I don't see if you can see that. Always Faithful. I don't know if you can read that or not right there. It's in that circle around the star. And that's an English translation of the Marine Corps motto Semper Fidelis, which is the Latin. And it's commonly quoted as Semper Fi by Marines. So this whiskey then has Marine Corps roots. Witherspoon tells the story of his learning to distill while in the middle of Africa on a deployment. And I've seen several local stories and blogs about the Witherspoon Distillery and a few reviews of the whiskey, but I've not been there, and it may be too late. In the past 2 years, there's been a transition from the Witherspoon Distillery to Bendt5 Distillery. And the DeHarts, Natasha and Ryan, are still involved with Bendt5, I gather, but I don't see Witherspoon's name mentioned with that anymore. They still make, or have been making, the Witherspoon brand in the last 2 years, but now they've introduced their new flagship brand called the Bendt5 Blended Whiskey, which I will review next. So the only names I'm seeing now is Natasha and Ryan DeHart. I have no idea of anything about them, but Quentin Witherspoon was a Marine, and he started this whiskey. So, and I haven't found out what happened. I don't know if they bought him out, if he sold out, or who knows. I have no idea what happened there. Now, I was first introduced to Witherspoon Straight Bourbon about a year and a half ago at Total Wine, and was told then that the brand was going away. So as of November 2021, I'm still able to find some bottles of the Witherspoon Old Fashioned, and then the Witherspoon finished whiskeys, like this one. This is a port finish, and they've got another one, sherry finished, I think. But I have not found the Straight Bourbon at 100 proof that I initially purchased a year and a half or 2 years ago. So I think what they're doing is they're going through their stock and finishing out the Witherspoon line is what I gather. I think that's what's happening, which is sad because this Witherspoon really is a pretty good whiskey. So for the history, I'm going to give 4 out of 5 points, because there's a little bit of lack of clarity about the transition from Witherspoon to Bendt5. So the next category is marketing. Here we're going to look closely at the bottle. Now, I have seen no advertisements for this whiskey, but I have seen a few blogs and reviews, so it's not unknown, though it's certainly not one of the bigger brands here in the North Texas area. This 750 milliliter bottle is really kind of a big, clunky, rectangular looking thing. It's tall, a little bit on the gaudy side, certainly cheesy even. The label to me is just not very attractive. The bottle is topped with a wooden cap and a rubber cork. And then you saw this string attached that says port cask finished, and then on the back, it's actually got, well, here on the front, it's got a number, bottle number 121 of barrel number 912, I think. It's almost unreadable. On the other side of the tag says Double Cask Project Iberian Series, and it explains a bit about this whiskey and how it was matured in port wine cask from Portugal. The security label on the top also said port finished. The front label does have some good things, but it just could have been done better, I think. The metallic silver label with black highlights has the Witherspoon name at the top, and then a 5-point Texas star in the middle of the circle. Around the star, like I said earlier, it's got Always Faithful at the top, but honoring tradition around the bottom. The space between the star and the inner circle is clear, so you can see the whiskey, which is kind of cool, as is the subtle use of the Marine Corps motto translated into English. Honoring tradition also serves as a dual-purpose statement coming to both the traditions of whiskey and the United States Marine Corps. Let me pause for just a minute and continue in a little bit. Okay, I'm back. So the dual purpose of honoring tradition talks about the traditions of whiskey as well as the Marine Corps. Underneath the whiskey is Texas, and below the main label at the base of the bottle is all the official stuff. Straight bourbon whiskey on the left side is 46% alcohol by volume, and on the right side, handwritten, it says 92 proof. Below that in small font is Witherspoon Distillery, and on the right side of the bottle is all that legal warning and barcode. On the left is a statement about Quentin Witherspoon and his service in the Marine Corps in Central Africa, and how he's a 5th-generation Texan. So I thought that was cool that the founder of this whiskey included a little bit of his personal story there. But the bottle is a big clunky affair, so really 3 out of 5 points for marketing and the bottle. But again, with marketing, when you're a small distillery, you're not going to be able to afford a whole lot of marketing. But 3 out of 5 points there. Composition, up to 15 points. Now the first problem is that the website for Witherspoon lists this port finished bourbon as 108 proof. But I think that's a few years old, because my bottle says 92 proof. The Witherspoon bourbon that I bought last time was 100 proof, and it's not even included anymore. So the website's obviously outdated. It's got a 2019 date, and so they just haven't updated it. The bourbon, though, on there is listed as having a high corn mash bill. And there's one reviewer I checked from 2017 saying that he thought the bourbon mash bill was 75% corn, and that it used all American products but was distilled and aged. Hold on just a minute. Okay, we got a little sidetracked there, but we'll pick right up. The composition of this, I don't know how long it's spent in a port barrel. It's got straight bourbon on the front, so it's been at least 2 years old, and then finished in the port barrels. Who knows how long? So I'm going to say composition 11 out of 15 points for this whiskey. Physical appearance, you can see how dark that is. I mean, that's got a nice red tinge to it that's actually quite beautiful. I mean, really, that's a nice looking finished whiskey there. Kind of a red hued amber, darker than most, I think. Although I've noticed that the finished whiskeys really do have a color advantage there. I saw that with the Oak and Eden finished whiskeys. For whatever reason, I tend to prefer the looks of darker whiskeys for whatever reason, just an aesthetic thing. And so clearly this port wine has influenced the color. I'll give it a 4 out of 5 for color and appearance. The nose, or the aroma, when I first poured it, I could get an alcohol fume vapor, but now when I smell it, my nose is almost useless. I do have just a very vague smell of fruit, sweet fruit, a little bit. So perhaps I should file for disability for my nose. I don't know. 7 out of 10 for the nose. I'm sure somebody else could smell it better. Palate or taste? This has the classic bourbon flavors of sweet corn, spices. I'm not getting any vanilla at all. I'm not picking up any vanilla. Maybe hints of cinnamon, a little bit of cinnamon, but the port wine influence is noticeable from start to finish. Really, right away, this comes across with that port wine in a very pleasant, sweet fruit flavor. It's gentle. It's not overpowering. It's in the background, but it's noticeable. And from the very start, of the tip of my tongue to the finish. So this is just really an amazing glass of whiskey. I really do like this. It's the flavor is good. So yeah, I'm gonna give that a 21 out of 25 on the flavor. Mouthfeel. The mouthfeel is not exceptionally oily. But neither is it's not thin either. It does it punches above weight. It's a 92 proof, and this actually impacts more like 100 proof with a noticeable burn, which with me, I like the burn. Okay, and so when people say they want a smooth whiskey, they mean no burn. And smooth is great. I mean, there's some Irish whiskeys that are very smooth. There's some scotches that are very smooth, and that's fine. But that's a kind of a different thing. If push comes to shove, I like a little bit of a burn. The port though shows up and tamps down on that a little bit. So the mouthfeel, it is a tingly, burny thing from maybe not right at the start, but halfway through the palate, and then kind of a long-lasting finish. So it lasts for a good while. I'm giving it a strong finish. So I would say for a mouthfeel, 12 out of 15 for this 92 proof whiskey. Let's talk about price and availability. I paid $44.99 for this 750 milliliter bottle of Witherspoon Port Finished in September at Total Wine. And that's pretty close to what I paid for the Straight Bourbon a year or two ago. The Straight Bourbon may have been just a little bit cheaper. Both of these spec stores on my side of town have the old-fashioned bottle. It's a bottle, but it's already done as an old-fashioned, I guess. Goody Goody has the old-fashioned listed on their website. They also have the older 108 proof bottle, but of the port finished. But they also state that they're out of stock. So, in short, all the evidence points to this whiskey fading away, and that's a shame, because this is really a very tasty whiskey. So, the only place that I've been able to get this is at Total Wine, and that's where I got the Straight Bourbon a year and a half or so ago. So, it's just not as available anymore, and I think that's because it's a dying breed. So for a craft whiskey distilled and aged in Texas, local to me, with a port finish, I think that $44.99 price is a fair price. Add in the fact that it is going away, and I think this may be a rare whiskey now, and I may have to get another bottle before I even finish this one, because this is really a very nice finished bourbon. I mean, I'm going to say that I really liked the Oak and Eden finished whiskeys that I tried a month ago, and this rates up there with them. So I'm going to give price, value, availability as a 10 out of 10, and the emphasis there is on its value. Availability, it's just not available that much, and so normally I would score that down, but as far as value goes, with this thing going out of stock, yeah, it's a 10 for 10 on price and value. Now, neat or mixer, I include this category even though I don't do mixed drinks. So I like it neat, obviously. I mean, that's how I drink all my whiskeys. But I can see this probably being used in some very good cocktail where a port finish is going to work great with that. And so, for those of you who like mixed drinks, this one would be probably outstanding there. So I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 for being neat or a mixer. And then the final category for me is the bonus points category. I am a fan of local distilleries, and this whiskey is local to me. It is definitely delicious, and I fear that it's going away forever. So that's much sadness, but 5 out of 5 bonus points. This gives it a total score of 82 on my scale, and my scale is always, it's a pretty rough scale. But as far as a letter grade, I'm going to say it's a B+. Who would I recommend this whiskey to? Well, if you are in North Texas, Fort Worth, Dallas area, North Texas in general, and you want to taste your way around the DFW whiskey distilleries, the Fort Worth whiskeys, North Texas, you better move quickly, because this solid whiskey is going away. If you like flavored whiskeys, or finished whiskeys, I should say, and want to try something with a port finish, absolutely go for this one. If you like Texas whiskeys, but you want to try something outside of the Balcones Iron Root style that's got that funky Texas flavor, try this whiskey. I don't know how they made it. I mean, it's aged in Texas. It is made and aged in Texas. I don't know how they made it without the Texas funk, but they did. So also, if you're into veteran or military related whiskeys, you should try Witherspoon before it goes away. Well, that finishes out this whiskey review number 10 for Stab the Dragon. So out here, we will try again next week.